Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So welcome everybody to today's Dhamma talk. Last time we had a program here in our Pa'ak Center in Georgia. Someone mentioned that a lot of meditators are having trouble with tension in their head when they're meditating. They find it very difficult to practice anapanasati meditation. So this is a problem that meditators find from not only meditators coming to the Pa'ak centers. Many different meditators have reported this kind of problem. They get a lot of tension, and there are a few solutions. So the first thing is to look for a physical cause to the solution. So sometimes it's possible that somebody has a headache and they attribute it to their meditation, and they simply have some kind of sinus infection or something like this. It gets aggravated because they're focusing on the area around the nose, and they notice the pain more. So this is the simple case. In some cases, if you can get treatment for that kind of a problem, then it'll be possible to continue your anapanasati meditation as usual. However, other people have a longer term problem. It can be quite difficult to correct. And in this kind of situation, one of the solutions is to bring the mind to a broader object, so that you're not trying to focus on such a small area. Now, there are several ways of doing this, and today we're going to talk about maybe three of them, at least three of them. So one of them we find in the Majjhima Nikaya, and the sutta is called the Chula Sunyata Sutta, and we're going to look at just the first section of the sutta. It's actually a long sutta. It leads from a very simple meditation all the way up to arahantship. But just for the relevant part, it's Majjhima Nikaya 121. We're going to follow Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation here. And his translation of the title is The Shorter Discourse on Voidness. Chula is small or little. Sunyata, sometimes we translate as emptiness or voidness. Onund. Just as this palace of Migara's mother is void of elephants, cattle, horses and mares, void of gold and silver, void of the assembly of men and women, there is present only this non-voidness, namely, this singleness dependent on the Sangha of bhikkhus. So too, a bhikkhu not attending to the perception of the village, not attending to the perception of people, attends to the singleness dependent on the perception of the forest. His mind enters into that perception of forest and acquires confidence, steadiness, and resolution. He understands thus, whatever disturbances there might be dependent on the perception of village, those are not present here. Whatever disturbances there might be dependent on the perception of people, those are not present here. There is present only this amount of disturbance, namely, the singleness dependent on the perception of forest. He understands the field of perception is void of the perception of the village. The field of perception is void of the perception of people. There is present only this non-voidness, namely, the singleness dependent on the perception of forest. Thus he regards it as void of what is not there, but as to what remains there he understands, that which is present thus, this is present. Thus Ananda, this is his genuine, undistorted, pure descent into voidness. Again Ananda, a bhikkhu, not attending to the perception of people, not attending to the perception of forest, attends to the singleness dependent on the perception of earth. His mind enters into that perception of earth and acquires confidence, steadiness, and resolution. Just as a bull's hide becomes free from folds when fully stretched out 100 pegs, so to a bhikkhu, not attending to any of the ridges and hollows of this earth, to the rivers and ravines, the tracks of stumps and thorns, the mountains' uneven places, he attends to the singleness dependent on the perception of earth. So similarly, the mind becomes concentrated on the perception of earth. So this is an, we can call it an unconventional way of entering into the earth kasina. It's not the way that we would normally, that is normally taught in the modern day, but the Buddha did teach it this way. So typically, according to the Visuddhimagga, the kasinas are taught, they're usually taught with discs. So there would be a circle sort of scratched into clay, like clay earth, like some soil or something, or it can be a disc that is covered in clay, and that is used as an object to develop the internal perception of earth, develop concentration on that. But today we're dealing with a specific problem. So somebody is focusing for whatever reason, because of bad habits, because of wrong habits of focusing. Maybe there's tension in their eyes. Maybe who knows, whatever the reason is, but they're getting tension in their head when they meditate. So here then, in this case, the Buddha is talking about the palace of Megara's mother, which is the monastery at Savatthi where they were staying. And so the instruction is to pay attention to this peaceful monastery and to realize that all the disturbances of the village, of the town, they're not here. This is a quiet place for meditation. And this area is empty of all those things. It's empty of, we can adapt. So if you're in a quiet place for meditation, if you're in the forest, this place is empty of trains, it's empty of tram cars, it's empty of subways, it's empty of airplanes, it's empty of busyness, it's empty of street hawkers, it's empty of panhandlers, it is empty of bosses and managers, and it's empty of paperwork. All of these things, whatever kind of things that you find noisy and disturbing in daily life, your meditation hall or the forest where you're meditating, it's empty of those things. So focusing on that, you have a very broad awareness. And of course, it's a conceptual awareness, right? Obviously, you cannot be directly aware of the entire, you would not be able to be directly aware of the entire monastery, the entire forest, or your entire meditation hall, but sitting there with your eyes closed, you're contemplating this, it's empty of those things. And then in this instruction, then the Buddha converts this to paying attention to the forest around it, and then to the earth. And he says to pay attention to the earth and imagine the earth has been stretched out flat, with that free of ravines, free of folds, and then focus on that smooth earth. And then the mind can become concentrated on that. And so this is also a kind of concentration where the mind is very spread out. Now, to develop the earth kasina, it takes a little more, it would take more instructions than that, actually. It's not quite that simple, but this would be, in theory, it would be a way to acquire this sign of the mental image of earth. But the goal we're talking about today is to reduce tension in the mind. So if this tension in the body, actually, so if you have the tension that's coming from tension in the mind, sometimes by making a broader object, paying attention to an object that is intrinsically peaceful. So the forest, your meditation hall, this is an intrinsically peaceful object. It's free of all of these things that annoy you usually in daily life. And you can take delight in that. Your mind can become absorbed in that perception. Now, just to keep your mind from wandering away, you can just think to yourself, empty. You can repeat the word empty to yourself, empty, 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 or something like that. So this is one of the techniques that's possible to do to overcome this kind of tension. Now, there are a number of other techniques, and the 4 elements meditation, it might be suitable for some people. So if they've been practicing anapanasati meditation for a long time, they've got a lot of tension, they might want to try practicing 4 elements meditation. So I thought we would go through Pak Sayadawji's instructions on Four Elements meditation from his book, Mindfulness of Breathing and Four Elements Meditation. So I'll just read a few pages from it here. Usually it wouldn't be taught right away. It would usually be taught after somebody had developed their Anapanasati meditation. But in cases where you really cannot practice Anapanasati, you need to adapt. So, Part 2. How to develop Four Elements meditation. In the Pali text, there are two ways for developing the Four Elements meditation, in brief and in detail. The brief method, which will be explained here, is meant for those of quick understanding. The detailed method is meant for those who have difficulty with the brief method. The Buddha taught the brief method in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. A bhikkhu reviews this very body, however it be positioned or placed, as consisting of just elements thus. There are in this body just the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air element. The Visuddhimagga, chapter 11, paragraphs 41 to 43, explains further. So firstly, one of quick understanding who wants to develop this meditation should go into solitary retreat. Then he should advert his entire material body and discern the elements in brief in this way. In this body, what is hard or rough is the earth element. What is flowing or cohesion is the water element. What is maturing, ripening, or heat is the fire element. What is pushing or supporting is the air element. And he should advert and give attention to it and review it again and again as earth element, water element, fire element, air element. That is to say, as mere elements, not a being and soulless. As he makes an effort in this way, it is not long before concentration arises in him, which is reinforced by understanding that illuminates the classification of the elements, which is only access and does not reach absorption, because it has states with individual essences as its object. Or, alternatively, there are these four parts mentioned by Elder Sariputta for the purpose of showing absence of any living being in the four great primary elements thus. When a space is enclosed with bones, sinews, flesh, and skin, there comes to be the term material form, and he should resolve each of these, separating them out by the hand of knowledge, and then discern in the way already stated. This, in these, what is hardness, etc., as its objects, as was just mentioned. As taught at Pa'ak Meditation Center, discern in the whole body the earth element, consisting of hardness, roughness, heaviness, softness, smoothness, and lightness. I'll repeat these. So each of the elements is broken down into some kind of sensations that can be felt in the body. This is important because in the modern day, we don't really know what these elements are. In ancient India, they'd have a better idea about these things. Earth element, hardness, roughness, heaviness, softness, smoothness, lightness. Water element, flowing, cohesion. Fire element, heat, coldness. Air element, supporting, pushing. To learn this meditation, you must begin by learning how to discern each of the 12 qualities or characteristics of the four elements, one at a time. Usually the beginner must be taught the characteristics which are easier to discern first, and the more difficult ones later. They are usually taught in this order: pushing, hardness, roughness, heaviness, supporting, softness, smoothness, lightness, heat, coldness, flowing, cohesion. Each characteristic must be discerned first in one place in the body, and then one must try to discern it throughout the body. So those are the basic instructions. Sayadawji gives some concrete examples. So we have these 12 characteristics of the four elements, and we're trying to discern them throughout the body. Now notice, as I said, we're trying to use some kind of meditation object with a more diffuse awareness to bring the mind away, to bring the attention away from the area where you're experiencing so much tension. This is it for this, for the purposes of this talk. So going back to Sayadawji's instructions, to discern pushing, you may begin by being aware, through the sense of touch, the pushing in the center of the head as you breathe in and breathe out. When you can discern the characteristic of pushing, you should concentrate on it until it becomes clear to your mind. Then you should move your awareness to another part of the body nearby and look for pushing there. In this way, you will slowly be able to discern pushing first in the head, then the neck, the trunk of the body, the arms, the legs, and feet. You must do this again and again, many times, until wherever you place your awareness in the body, you can easily see pushing. If the pushing of the breath in the center of the head is not easy to discern, then try being aware of pushing as the chest expands when breathing, or as the abdomen moves. If these are not clear, try to discern the pulse beat as the heart pumps, or any other obvious form of pushing. Wherever there is movement, there is also pushing. Wherever you begin, you must continue to slowly develop your understanding so that you can discern pushing throughout the body. In some places it will be obvious, and in other places subtle, but it is present everywhere throughout the body. We won't go through the other 11 characteristics and the complete details. These instructions are available for free online in Sayadawji's books, but essentially the first stage is to go through the body and try to discern these different characteristics in each place. So when you do this, you'll find that all of the sensations that you feel in the body, all of them can be categorized under one of these different kinds of characteristics. So all of the things that we can feel are subsumed under these 12 characteristics in these four elements. So after being able to discern these in the entire body, the next step is to, actually there are a few steps, but eventually you'll go back and collapse them down. So remembering the 6 characteristics of the earth element, then pay attention to all 6 of them at one time and try to discern just the earth element in the body. And then just the water element, the fire element, the air element, again and again throughout the body. And because you're going through the body trying to discern these things, then hopefully the mind will be able to concentrate on the object, to develop concentration and understanding without getting so much tension. Now, we also mentioned this book, we just quoted Venerable Sariputta talking about paying attention to the 4 elements in the body. And so this is a teaching of paying attention according to the different parts of the body. So in Pali, we say Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, Tacho. Like this, we talk about head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, bones, heart, lungs, all the different parts of the body. And the various parts have a predominance of different elements. So you can think, for example, bones are a relatively hard part of the body. And so they're primarily this quality of hardness and perhaps some roughness, or depending on the bone, maybe smoothness. And so then this would come under the earth element, the predominance of earth. Whereas something like saliva, obviously it has qualities of flowing and also heat, right? You're gonna have some heat together with the saliva. So it's predominantly the water element mixed with the heat element. Now, all elements can actually be found in all of the parts of the body. All of the elements are dependent on each other. So when something's pushing, it has to have something to push against, and so then it will be pushing against, you can say, like the earth element. So this is one option. So we followed now 2 of the options. The first one was simply contemplating the area around you as empty. The meditation hall is empty. The forest around you is empty. Empty of disturbances. Focusing on this concept of emptiness. The second, that one is more of something you can do time to time. It's not really meant to be taken as your main meditation object. Whereas the 4 elements meditation can be taken as your main meditation object. There are different steps you can take. There are also instructions on how to balance the elements in the body in this way. And so if you take the opposing, if you find a lot of tension and you're able to discern, this tension, there's a lot of hardness in it. And so you can focus on softness in the body to try to balance this tension. And in fact, there's a section in this book about this. Let's see if I can find the section. Yes. While practicing in this way, the elements will be, for some meditators, not balanced. Some elements may become excessive and unbearable. Particularly hardness, heat, and pushing can become excessively strong. If this occurs, you should pay more attention to the quality opposite to the one that is in excess, and continue to develop concentration in that way. You may find that this will balance the elements again, and it is for this reason 12 characteristics were taught in the first place. When the elements are balanced, it is easier to attain concentration. For balancing the elements, the opposites are hardness and softness, roughness and smoothness, heaviness and lightness, flowing and cohesion, heat and coldness, supporting and pushing. So for somebody who wants to review that, this is on page 24 of this book, Mindfulness of Breathing and 4 Elements Meditation by Paul Sayadaw. Now, actually, we've already covered some other methods to deal with this tension issue. And we dealt with this in the sutta called this Pachalayamana Sutta. And this was the one where Venerable Mahamoggallana was sleepy. Before he attained arahantship, he was nodding off in his sleep. And then the Buddha came to him and he gave some advice about how to overcome this problem of drowsiness. So do you remember some of the things that he recommended? So one of the things that he recommended was to pay attention to a Dhamma theme. So to think of a Dhamma theme. So instead of focusing on your breath, then you can focus on whichever theme that you find that you have good knowledge of or you find is suitable. So some people like to think about, especially in the Burmese tradition, some people like to think about Abhidhamma. And so they can take some kind of, they can contemplate these different kind of causes and conditions from Patana. So Hetupachyo, Aramanapachyo, Adipatipachyo, Anantarapachyo, Samanantarapachyo, like that. And try to understand what they mean. So you should have some kind of understanding of whatever topic you choose. So if you've studied that, then you can choose that topic. If you don't have knowledge of that, you can choose a sutta that you recite frequently. Something like Mahamangala Sutta or Karaniyametta Sutta. And you can think about the different passages in it. Sakko, capable. What does capable mean? Uju, upright. What does upright mean? Suhuju, very upright. Suvacho, easily admonished. And contemplating these different qualities that the Buddha is advising one to develop. Or in the case of Mahamangala Sutta, the different kinds of qualities that are considered auspicious. So you can go through it and think about it. And then another recommendation that the Buddha gave in that sutta is simply mentally reciting the sutta or orally reciting the sutta. If you happen to be alone and you're having trouble and mentally reciting the sutta is not removing the tension, because in our culture we rely less on our rote memory than in ancient times. So sometimes when people try to recall things, they might get tension. So you can recite the sutta, even reading it aloud is okay. So for this kind of purpose, it's helpful to choose a sutta with, I would say choose a sutta with a good meditation theme. If you're going to recite a sutta aloud and because you have too much tension, maybe you can chant Anattalakkana Sutta, or you can chant Adita Pariyaya Sutta, the fire sermon, or some people might like to chant the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the sutta on the turning of the wheel of Dhamma, the Buddha's first sermon and Varanasi to the 5 ascetics. So in that way, it might also help with this problem of tension. Now, also in that Pachalayamana Sutta, there's some other techniques that might be helpful. And so one of the techniques is changing posture. So it might be possible by switching to the posture of walking meditation, then the tension might start to dissipate. And this is for mental reasons as well as physical. So for mental reasons, the concentration, like the mind doesn't become as tense because the awareness has to be a little more diffuse. There has to be some awareness of the body walking in order to keep it in line, keep it turning at the right place, so that you don't walk too far, you don't walk too short, etc. And the other reason is physical. It's possible that there are physical reasons that are aggravating the tension. So sometimes people get tension in the head, and it can be caused by, for example, they have some kind of problem in the back. So maybe they have muscle tension in the back, and then it's pressing on their spine or something like this. And then it sort of can be felt in other parts of the body as well. And it ends up making the meditation feel tense. But the problem sometimes isn't really the meditation. It's some kind of problem with the sitting posture. And sometimes the blood flow might not be so good. So for example, especially after a meal, a lot of people find that their stomach feels very bloated and they feel very drowsy. And some people might even feel tension because they're trying to overcome this drowsiness by excessive effort. So by switching to the walking posture, then they might be able to improve the blood flow to the lower regions of the body, especially to help digestion, and in helping digestion, helping with their meditation. Standing posture is also possible. It's not as commonly taught. And since people don't tend to have experience with standing meditation, then we don't recommend it so much. But it's definitely possible. It's one of the postures that the Buddha recommended. So those are a few thoughts about overcoming tension. One thing that some meditators have reported, some meditators report when they meditate, then their eyes start to look at their nostrils, and they become a bit cross-eyed when they meditate. And the tension from the force of becoming cross-eyed, of focusing on the nostrils, that can give them tension. So this problem is, I think there are probably different ways to fix it. I think probably one way to fix it would be to meditate with your eyes open for some time. And so then for example, you can put a book in front of you or a piece of paper in front of you, and you can draw like a line on a piece of paper, and then you can look at the line some distance away. And then focus half on your breath and half on the line. And so this is just to train the eyes to be able to focus on your breath without actually looking at it. You can even try doing this by focusing on other parts of the body and with the eyes open, and notice if the eyes are tracking where your mind goes. So to try to train yourself with your eyes open to focus without moving the eyes. And then hopefully when you close your eyes to meditate, then you'll be able to overcome this problem and the tension will go away. So don't expect that to get instant results. Actually, a lot of the time when people get tension in their meditation, it is something that has been built up from habits or from conditions for a long time, and it can take some time to correct. And probably if you can't get it corrected by yourself, it's better to consult with a teacher. But we'll call this like a troubleshooting manual. So I hope that some of these techniques might be helpful for you and that your meditation may progress smoothly. your concentration will develop, your wisdom will develop, and may you attain the peace of Nibbana as swiftly as possible. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.